I'm going to read a direct quote from a client about their mom. She is so sad when I talk to her. She drops her head, sometimes cries, and I can just tell how my letting her know destroys her. I don't ever want her to feel that way. I just can't talk to her. I'm Rob, and it's yes time. I said, you know, I love you. And the daughter said, yeah, Mom, I know you love me. She says, no, I want to talk to you about something. I need to process something with you. The daughter said, okay. And she said, you know, I need to apologize for not being there when you needed me for all those years as I was grieving over your little brother's death. I abandoned you and I'm sorry. She said this daughter just started weeping, and then she went through those volatile shame emotions. She started experiencing her own shame. She would get angry and blame the mom for everything. And at first, this mom told me, she says, I felt like I at first needed to defend myself. And isn't that true? That when we get into these communications and a child lashes out, which is often them processing their shame, we sometimes as parents feel that need to defend ourselves. Yet, boom, that creates the fight. But what this mother realized is she was in a place, she had prepped herself, and she shut that down temporarily. She said, okay, I just need to let her process her shame. And so for a few minutes, the daughter just wept, at times being very contrite, at times being angry, blaming the mom for all the problems, at other times blaming herself for all the problems. And then she started calming down, and the mom said something along the lines of, thank you so much for trusting me enough to let me be here for you so you could process that. I am so sorry that things have been so hard. I want you to know that I'm here for you, that we can talk about anything, that when you're frustrated, you can come to me. When you're happy, I want you to come to me. But I'm here for you. I'm present for you. And she said throughout the next months, this connection occurred where this daughter would come to her for everything. All the problems she was experiencing, the heartbreaks, the ups and downs of life. And as a result, the issues that were taking place began to heal. And amazing progress was made, not just in the relationship, but within the daughter's life. As we learn to process through shame, this is the result. When we learn to meet shame where it's at, from the loved one's perspective, and learn to be present with it. Oftentimes, that requires us to work through our own shame. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's a single human being in this world that doesn't go through this difficulty of navigating shame. Because I do it, I have been there, I have beat myself up many a times for the mistakes I've made as a parent, for the mistakes I've made as an individual. And I know you have done that too. But when we can embrace those mistakes, when we can look at ourselves, and when we can walk into that place, what I call that quagmire of shame, and we can reach for someone else, and instead of pushing them away, we can grab their hand and we can take them through that place with us. It becomes this powerful connection where all of a sudden, all those behaviors, all the problems, all the addictions, yes, they're still there. But all of a sudden, we're focused on the connection and the relationship. Instead of worrying about the next consequence to give, we're worried about how we can be there for another person, present with them, available to them emotionally, as difficult as that is. Does that mean we shut off all consequences and all punishment? No, not at all. There has to be rule systems. There have to be consequences in place. But when we focus on what I just expressed and what you're experiencing right now listening to this video, as we focus on that connected emotion, all those other things fall into place from a secondary standpoint and thus become more effective rather than being the focus. When we lead with the punishment, it just amplifies the already existing shame. For example, if someone was to relapse and we lead with the punishment, I'm going to give a biggie here. The consequence being, if you relapse again, you will not be able to live in our home as an adult child. So let's say it's a 19-year-old who's struggling with a drug addiction. If we lead with that consequence, the shame they're already feeling will be met with the shame of the consequence and explode and disconnect. And we can sometimes be so exhausted when we're trying to deal with behavioral issues that that's where we go, because we want to feel like we're empowered to make that decision. And often we're encouraged through different parenting courses, you need to have boundaries and be empowered. And while that's correct, we miss that core fundamental need of processing through the shame first, which goes like this. Wow, I'm so sorry you had a relapse. Thank you so much for coming to me and being willing to talk to me about that. That must be really scary for you. You know I'm here for you. You know I'm here to help you through this. What do you need to do next? And oftentimes what'll happen is they'll go to the consequence. Rather, well, I have the rule that if I mess up again, I'm out of the house. How brave of them to let you know they've relapsed in the first place. Or let's say they got caught and it wasn't them that came to you. You know, that might be the concern. And you confront them and say, you know, you've relapsed again. You can still lead with that empathy, with that non-shame interaction. They're going to be feeling shame and they might go, no, I didn't. None of this happened. Say, I'm here for you. I am so sorry that this is so difficult. I love you so much. And leading with that empathy, leading with that, sometimes they'll make the choice to withdraw. Sometimes they'll make the choice to lie and to argue. That's the defense mechanism of shame taking place. But if you lead with that and then set the boundary, what they will remember is that you led with love and that they can come back to you because you will lead again with love and connection. Even if a consequence has to be enforced afterward. So always lead with empathy, working with the shame, okay? Not against it. If we push against and fight the shame, right? Or kick them while they're already down, that's not going to create the connection. It's always going to lead to the consequence, which will leave them feeling that shame. But if we help them process through their shame, which requires us to enter that quagmire with them, put our hand in that quicksand with them and say, I'm here with you. I'm here with you and we're going to get through this together. That doesn't mean that there's not consequences. But it means that they feel like you're safe, that you genuinely love them and that you're there to help them through that. That's the key to behavioral healing. It's one of the most important places we can go with our loved ones as we're helping them work through their issues. You know, let's take another thing like obsessive compulsive disorder. Let's say someone has that obsessive compulsive side. They have to wash their hands 30 times or have to turn off a light switch 20 times or something bad will happen to someone else. Let's say someone's in that obsessive compulsive place. They're feeling so much shame. They're wanting that part of their brain to just shut off or be gone. They're feeling so much shame that they have to do these things to feel functional. When we can walk into that place with them and say, you know what? Your brain is awesome. You're an amazing person. That must be incredibly difficult for you. I'm here for you. You can talk to me anytime about those feelings and emotions. I'm here for you. All of a sudden, we're not giving power to the problem. We are giving power to the relationship. Isn't that incredible how that works? But what often happens is parents with an OCD child will get frustrated because the child's getting frustrated and the child's feeling shame and they're reacting in frustration, and so the parent gets frustrated. You know, you don't need to shower for 15 minutes just so that you'll be safe. Can't you see that that's ridiculous? And inside their mind they're saying, I already know it's ridiculous. I'm ridiculous. I'm a failure. I'm a screw up. I'm broken. Versus when we can say, hey, you know what? There is nothing wrong with needing to do things this way. I'm here for you. You know, I'm here to help you get as much power back together with you. And we can do this together. Oh my gosh, now I have this ally who's not looking down on me for my issues. And it becomes powerful in the relationship. And we could go on and on about examples. And as you're watching this, think of some issues that are taking place in your life. With your children, with your loved ones, with a spouse, I don't care. With whatever the issue is that's driving shame, make a comment, write a question, we'll post a video on it. That's what this program, that's what this educational course is all about, is being interactive with you. And we want to be here for you to answer these questions, to help you through this process. I want to really get an important point across. There are 6 things that we do as human beings that can create deep disconnection through shame. And Dr. Brene Brown, who I've referred to before, really nailed this. And that's why I'm using her 6 points, because I don't want to reinvent a wheel that's already beautifully round. And that's what she's developed with these 6 points. So if you have done these things, but by the way, it was so funny as I was developing this module out, I was talking to my wife, I'm like, I have done like 4 of these probably in the last year with people, and I've been beautiful in processing shame with other people. So I'm not saying that just because you do one of these that you're terrible, because the fact is I've done a number of them even within the last year, and just processing through this chapter myself, holy cow, it's such an eye-opener to me. And I was even feeling shameful writing this chapter, going through this process. So shame is this ever-present thing, yet what's interesting is my wife, who's helping me develop this book, I pulled her into that quagmire and I said, I'm sitting here writing this and feeling shameful doing it because of all my imperfections. And she said, wow, you know, that's got to be incredibly difficult to experience that while you're actually writing it. And I said, yeah, it feels kind of hypocritical. And she says, yeah, that must be kind of hard. You know what? You're awesome. I'm here for you in this process. And I was like, hey, honey, that was a fabulous job at processing shame with me. And so it's kind of funny because you're not alone, in other words. So here are the 6 things. Number 1, if you're processing shame and the person that you're processing with needs to be consoled because of your shame, like it's too much for them to handle. You talk to them about your drug addiction, for example. You know, so if I'm the person, so if you're this person and someone's coming to you and saying, I have this drug addiction, and you say, oh my gosh, whoa, that's, and you don't know how to process it, and then all of a sudden the person coming to you is like, well, let me tell you. So if you're the one needing to be consoled because of what someone else has shared with you, it's time to think twice about that. Receiving someone's shame means that you receive it and that you don't need to be fixed because of the trauma of receiving that information. So if that's you, you should probably set a boundary or perhaps work through it, okay? Understand, become educated on what it is that they're experiencing. Number 2, the whole sympathy versus empathy. And I remember we talked about that. Sympathy is that, oh, I am so sorry, you poor thing, type of a thing, right? Instead of saying, I'm here for you, it's like, oh, you poor thing, you're gonna get through this. And it's all of a sudden like, you feel like you've hit a brick wall. Like you're driving down a hill, going 80 miles an hour, and when you hit empathy, empathy is like this cushion that you can embrace and flow into, the safety net. Sympathy is a brick wall that you hit and go bam, and it's like, why did I even open up? Because they did not just receive that, and it feels like junk. It's icky to feel sympathy. Number 3 person to avoid or to not be is, I'm so disappointed. Oh, how could you do that? You know, you can't do that. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So showing that deep disappointment is like shame on shame, collision course of shame again, okay? Because they're already feeling disappointed in themselves. But when you accept it with genuine love, they know that you're safe. Number 4 person. This is someone who's so uncomfortable with their own shame that they translate it into, how could you let this happen? You know, for example, this happens oftentimes. Let's say someone's coping with pornography addiction. And let's say the parent had a pornography addiction. This often happens with my clients. It's very common. Where the child will go to the parent and say, you know, Dad or Mom, I'm struggling with some porn. And if that parent experienced that and they haven't worked through their own shame, they'll often say, they'll feel protected. It's almost like this protective discomfort. How could you let that happen? You can't do this. And it might be out of the best intentions, but again, train wreck. Number 5, due to our own discomfort, we minimize their shame. we can't take it, and so we want to put it in a nice, safe little bucket over here where we feel like we can process it. And we start saying things like, oh, that's not that big of a deal, it's not that bad. When in reality, it is that bad. You know? And I've seen therapists, I've seen parents, I've seen, you know, we are so desirable for their process to work that when they have a relapse or have a weak moment, we want to box it up and play like it didn't happen, that it's not that bad. And that drives shame so deep, because then they've gone there and now they're thinking, oh, was I wrong? Should I not be feeling this way? Yes, they are feeling that way, and we need to genuinely receive that, okay? Number 6 is one of the ones that, man, when I'm sitting with a group of therapists, this one seems to happen quite often. It's the one-up. You know, oh man, this happened to me in a session. Oh, you think that's bad? This is what happened to me in a session the other day. So instead of receiving it, we try to one-up another person with our story. Oh man, you think your depression's bad? Let me tell you about my 7 days in bed without anyone there, and I didn't even care. Then all of a sudden, we feel like we just opened our heart to someone, and they said, that's not, no, what's your problem? My problems are way worse. And it feels yucky to be in that place. And it drives shame so deep when we go there, because we will often do the whole, yeah, you're right, I should just be more grateful. I shouldn't let these problems get me so down. And that is so deceptively destructive in a relationship, because what we are experiencing are our trials, are our difficulties, it's our shame. What your child is experiencing, you know, that one friend who ditched them at school, you might have felt like, oh, just suck it up, be tough, that's gonna happen, right? You know, that happened to me at school and it was way worse for me, you'll be fine. When what they're experiencing is devastating. We need to accept that and realize that that's hard for them and be there with them. When we experience a transaction with someone where we don't empathize and we do play into the shame, this is gonna happen. It's happened in our lives, it's happened in other lives. And I gave you that story about that woman and her daughter. There had been a lot of shame moments that had taken place along that journey. But what happened is when she was 17 and that woman sat on her daughter's bed, she made a reparation. She repaired shame damage that had taken place. She apologized and she opened up a safe environment for her daughter to process her shame without having to one-up or say, why did you do that? If you wouldn't have made this decision, or any of those things, or this isn't our belief system, or you made this mistake. She just was there. She was present. And we have that power, and you have that power as a parent, that when we do have a transaction with a child that ends up in a fight, and we've talked about this before, that research shows that when we go back and say, I am sorry, and truly empathize with someone, that is just as effective, and sometimes even more so, because it teaches conflict resolution than if it hadn't happened in the first place. And so I'm not saying to go out and just make mistakes so that you can have resolution, right? Of course not. But I am saying that if you have a transaction, let's say tomorrow, you have a moment, a child, takes the dollar off of the table, and you say, that money was for such and such, and how dare you do that? And then you realize, I just processed shame deeper. You can go back and say, I'm sorry. I want to talk to you about that. I reacted in a way that I don't think made you feel very good, and it didn't make me feel very good either. So can we talk about it? And then you have a conversation. You've done shame reparation, and that's a beautiful thing. So that's the great thing about the human capacity that we experience, is that we are resilient. That when someone comes to us, even in instances where we feel or they feel deeply wronged, and we genuinely put aside our own unhealthy pride, or whatever you want to call it, or our own shame, we put that aside and we're just present with them, how quickly that can heal relationships. And if we as a world if we as a society could go do this with our relationships that have been tattered or bruised and say, hey, you know what? I am sorry. I made a mistake. I want to repair this relationship. That's usually what the other person wants too. And they might still be in such a deep shame place that they might say, no, it's just too much. I can't forgive you. And you can say, I can understand that. Thank you for hearing me out. They are not going to be able to sleep on that. They're going to come back eventually. Maybe in a rare circumstance they won't, but that will create change, whether they want it to or not, because they'll have been dealt such deep empathy and love that it will require them to process that information in a healthier way. There's a super important piece that I want to talk about called critical moments. These are the moments when our children have been caught for doing something wrong, have been caught looking at porn or drinking or sneaking off to be with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or have stolen something, or have that breakup in that relationship that you didn't encourage anyways, or whatever it is. These critical moments where a behavior has taken place and we find out about it. It could be a shock moment, like you get the call from the police station, or it could be something really simple, like you told the kids to stop roughhousing on the couch and then the two of them bonked heads. That's still a critical moment, not as big of one, but critical moments are usually those moments where we have the greatest exertion of influence because we have someone backed into a corner. Okay? These are called critical moments. Critical moments are the most powerful times that we experience where we can have the greatest influence of empathy. So for example, you get the call from the police station. The child's thinking, I'm dead. I just got caught shoplifting. I just got busted for alcohol. I just got caught for sneaking out of the house for curfew, whatever it might be. And that critical moment is how you will react to that situation. Wow, this is going to be really difficult for you. I'm here for you through this process. I'm so sorry that this happened. And when you're there for them in that kind of a place, you align with them. They feel safe to then talk about it. What happened? Well, I was with my friends that did it, and they'll often fully disclose. Sometimes only partially, but if you continue to help them feel safe, they will fully disclose, and then you can help work through that critical moment. A kid gets caught looking at pornography on the computer. If you respond, what were you thinking? That's against the rules. All of a sudden, they're going to say, whenever this happens, I cannot talk to my parents because it's not safe. But if you say, wow, that must be really scary for you that I know about this. I'm here to talk to you about it. I'm not ashamed of you. I love you. I know that this must be really difficult, but I'm here to help you talk about it and work through it. That's what I call critical moments. So identify those critical moments. So here's your assignment. The assignment for your loved one is to identify a critical moment that you might have had recently. Maybe you can go back and do some shame reparation with. Or next time you experience a critical moment, think that in your head. Oh, critical moment, this just happened. How am I going to respond? For yourself, I want you to identify of those 6 ways, if over the last week or 2, or even over the last few months, if you have processed shame in any one of those 6 ways, either within yourself or with a loved one. Identify those and then write it down. You're welcome to go to it'syestime.com and respond there.